In Star Wars, things seem to be very black and white. Or, well, light and dark. The Republic and the Rebels, the good guys, the CIS, and the Empire, the bad. But I think there is a lot more to the Star Wars universe than this, and that's why I'm going to be starting this series where I'm just going to be examining certain elements of Star Wars and questioning them, just to analyze them and such, pick them apart. And so I'm going to be starting with the CIS, and are they the good guys, and were they justified in breaking off from the Republic? Now, before I get into my points, I want to start off by saying that the CIS are the antagonists in the Clone Wars TV shows and prequels. They are fighting against our protagonists in the form of the Jedi and Clone Troopers. All I want to do is blur the lines a bit more. This is not saying that the Republic is evil, just that the Separatists are more justified in their secession than we usually see in the shows. After all, we are seeing it through the lens of the Republic, and not the CIS. First off, let's examine why the CIS was created, outside of Palpatine's master plan, of course. Well, it's because many in the Outer Rim believed it wasn't being represented and helped by the Republic, and thus broke off. The core worlds held all of the influence in the Senate, and naturally the Outer Rim became disenfranchised with its role within the government. Furthermore, many Outer Rim planets had to wait centuries to even be accepted into the Republic, and as their eager senators arrived, they were swiftly ignored by the Senate as a whole. The catalyst for the CIS actually came in the form of taxes on trade routes, which, while it benefited the core and the Republic government, damaged Outer Rim planets who were already being exploited by pirates and forced into bad trade deals, and were further refused military protection by the Republic. That last point, I think, is particularly important, as these planets were clearly not economically stable enough to build a defense force of their own, and were not being protected by their government, left completely high and dry and defenseless. Based on the principles of the social contract, it was the Republic's obligation to protect these planets and their citizens, and instead they allowed piracy, slavery, cruel exploitation, and ended up fostering an incredibly corrupt political environment. I would argue by that point the Republic was actively acting against the interests of these planets in favor of keeping a grasp on the core worlds. Well, the idea of 1,000 generations of peace and prosperity that we are only told of happens in the prequels, it would seem for those on the Outer Rim it was the complete opposite of the case, just being exploited by pirates, various megacorporations, slavers, all sorts of things.
Yippee!
On top of all this, the Republic Senate was a complete nightmare. Corrupt and at a complete impasse, meaning that the only peaceful mechanism for these changes to take place were gone. And it would seem there is no other method other than for the CIS and the Outer Rim to take control of the situation and take charge for themselves. We can also look at the rights of these planets based on the idea of self-determination. The idea that all peoples have the right to freely choose their sovereignty and international political status with no interference. According to the United Nations Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and People adopted on December 14, 1960, all peoples have the right to self-determination by virtue of the right that they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Furthermore, inadequacy of political, economic, social, or educational preparedness should never serve as a pretext for delaying of independence, and most importantly, all armed action or repressive measures of all kinds directed against defendant people shall cease in order for them to be able to exercise peacefully and freely their right to complete independence, and the integrity of their national territory shall be respected. Now, this doesn't mean that the CIS are entitled to the outcome of independence, just that some sort of referendum be held so that they can make their voices heard. But there isn't anything to indicate foul play, just that the Outer Rim was content with seceding. Heck, there isn't even an argument to be made that there is a necessity to invade given a violation of democratic principles, as the CIS aren't setting up an Orwellian dictatorship. Instead, they have a functioning legislative body and civilian government that rules with the consent of the people, which is arguably more successful and corrupt than the Senate. Whereas the Republic was forced to occupy and coerce via force these planets into reintegrating with the Republic. And the Republic, in starting the war, instigated repressive actions and prevented the CIS from exercising the right to exercise peacefully and freely their right to complete independence. If the Republic existed in our world, it would be seen to be in clear violation of these principles. Firstly, that when the CIS declared itself independent, the Republic did not begin negotiations, and neither did the Jedi. The Republic immediately made the first move on Geonosis, not allowing the CIS to gain their right to independence and instead starting a full-scale war. Furthermore, they don't even try to give increased autonomy to those worlds or even try to attempt a kind of compromise. The Republic also contributes to this further as it is a very biased and unfair actor as a galactic government. During the Huck War, the Kaleesh were being enslaved by their oppressors, the Emri, and when they rebelled and killed the soldiers and civilians that settled on their homeworld in the colonies, the Republic intervened, not to bring about a fair peace, but brought the Jedi on the side of the Emri without trying to get any kind of background or see the other side of the issue. Then they decided to punish the Kaleesh in a one-sided peace deal, still not examining the other side in fairness. This would foster long-term ethnic violence, with the Emri desecrating Kaleesh burial sites and oppressing the Kaleesh. Thus, it is, in my opinion, that while the CIS are set up as evil, are well and truly justified in seeking their independence, even in fighting for it through force of arms. If the situation had been different with more actors involved, I would imagine it would be viewed as an illegal intervention, especially given the ways that the Republic could have handled this fairly easily. One option would be for the Republic to fund local planetary militaries like the Outland Security Force developed by Iriadu, which was very successful in combating piracy, or as well as coming to a compromise on the issue of space lane taxation, because both sides should benefit from the relationship. After all, the Outer Rim has raw resources and manufacturing, while the core has the markets for the goods that are made in the Outer Rim. I'll let Obi-Wan explain.
You and the Naboo form a symbiont circle. What happens to one of you will affect the other. You must understand this.
Right. Now to the part of the video that you've all been waiting for. Are the CIS the good guys? To which I say the answer is no. Yes, no. I mean no, but. Anyways, the CIS are not the quote-unquote good guys. And this may be a surprising answer given that I just justified their existence and independence, to which I'd say they are no more the good guys than the Republic. They are both flawed and have their own issues. Who is quote-unquote right depends on your own perspective and own beliefs. The CIS would go on to commit many war crimes, be it testing weapons on civilians, engaging in terrorist actions against neutral planets, using torture to extract information, experimenting on prisoners of war, backing Zygerian slavers, utilizing biological weapons, and in some cases committing genocide. Remember the Yamri from earlier? Grievous, a member of the Kaleesh species, would kill all of them in the name of the CIS and revenge. The list goes on, but there is an argument to be made that this wouldn't have happened had the Republic given their independence peacefully without the need for any violence. The Republic, too, has its own issues, namely Order 37, one of the contingency orders for the clone troopers that would threaten to kill civilians by rounding them up in order to get a fugitive to turn themselves in. They also made use of complete orbital bombardments, turning the surface of a planet to slag. In addition, they also inadvertently endangered the lives of the Coruscanti people by bringing the Zillabes there and killing who knows how many people in the process and causing millions in collateral damage. The other issue is given that the Republic had many government-run welfare systems that it couldn't afford to pay for under the stress of wartime, and they got shut off, hurting the people who depended on them most to fuel a war that shouldn't have started in the first place. Importantly, the Republic also used an army bred, engineered, and trained from birth for war. They have no life or rights outside of that. If the Clone Wars TV series gives us one thing, it's that these troopers are certainly individuals, with their own personality, values, and beliefs. Even without the inhibitor chip, it's very questionable. With it, the clones have no choice but to obey suicidal and dangerous orders for a government that doesn't even give them the right to vote. In this light, the Republic is funding a futuristic and cloned slave army composed of men without any control of their lives and forced to fight and die for a republic that doesn't grant them the same rights afforded to its citizens, even in the post-war environment. In fact, they are legally Kaminoan property and property of the GAR. Compare that to the CIS using a droid army, which I would argue not only does a droid army preserve sentient life to a greater degree, but is also a far more moral option compared to a clone army. Not that morality equals effectiveness, as in the end the victor writes the history, but it is an interesting point to ponder. What I'm getting at here is that neither side is really good. The CIS, if you're arguing based on the number of war crimes or not, the Republic based on its use of a clone army, Order 37, corruption, negligence, all that are also not. Both are flawed, and that's what I like about it. It's indicative of a more realistic and pragmatic form of world building that I really, really like. And sadly, it's something that we're really not getting enough of. We don't really end up seeing it in Force Awakens or Last Jedi, and we certainly don't really end up seeing it in Rebels. And truly, it's a shame, because in my opinion, that's when Star Wars is at its best. Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing to Couch Commander. It really helps me in a number of ways. One, it helps me reach a wider audience, so that way more people can like and subscribe to my channel. As Obi-Wan would describe, it is a circle, and so by you subscribing, it helps other people subscribe so that more people can subscribe so I can build my channel. That motivates me to create more content for you guys and allows me, or at least allows me to justify creating more content for this rather than just treating it as an occasional hobby. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, and have a good one. This is RZ0538, signing off.